The morning sun cast long shadows across the palace grounds as Catherine, the Princess of Wales, stood at her bedroom window. Her fingers traced the cool glass while she watched the gardeners tending to the roses below. Everything looked the same as it had for months, yet nothing would ever be the same again. The doctors had been clear during yesterday's meeting. The words still echoed in her mind like a haunting melody she couldn't escape. William entered the room quietly, carrying 2 cups of tea. He had learned to move softly around her lately, as if loud sounds might somehow make everything worse. Setting her cup on the windowsill, he wrapped his arms around her from behind. They stood together in silence, both knowing that words had become inadequate for what they were facing. "The children will be awake soon," Catherine whispered, her voice barely audible. She had been dreading this moment for weeks, knowing that today would be different from all the others. Today they would have to begin preparing their children for something no parent should ever have to explain. William pressed his face into her hair, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo. "We don't have to tell them everything today," he said gently. "We can take it slowly, let them understand bit by bit." But even as he spoke, he knew that time was becoming their enemy. The specialist had made it clear that Catherine's condition was progressing faster than anyone had hoped. Down the hallway, they could hear George's voice calling out to his siblings, probably trying to wake them for another adventure around the palace grounds. Charlotte's giggle followed, that sweet sound that never failed to bring smiles to their parents' faces. Louis was likely still buried under his covers, stubbornly refusing to start the day like he did every morning. Catherine turned in William's arms, looking up into his eyes. She could see the fear there, carefully hidden behind his brave smile. He had always been her rock, the steady presence that kept her grounded when the world felt too overwhelming. Now she watched him struggle to be strong for her while his own world was crumbling. "I need to make some recordings," she said suddenly, the idea forming as she spoke. "Videos for their birthdays, their graduations, their weddings. All the moments I might miss." Her voice broke slightly on the last words, but she pressed on. "I want them to know how proud I am of them, how much I love them." William nodded, understanding immediately. It was so like Catherine to think of others first, to plan for their happiness even in the face of her own uncertainty. "We'll do it together," he promised. "Whatever you need, whatever you want to say to them, we'll make sure they have it." They heard footsteps running down the corridor now, accompanied by excited chatter about breakfast and plans for the day. Catherine quickly wiped away the tears that had gathered in her eyes, straightening her shoulders in that familiar gesture of quiet strength that had made her beloved by millions around the world. The bedroom door burst open as George rushed in, still in his pajamas with his hair sticking up in every direction. "Mummy, Daddy! Charlotte says we can build a fort in the garden today, but only if you say it's okay." His eyes were bright with excitement, completely unaware of the heavy conversation his parents had been having just moments before. Charlotte appeared in the doorway, more cautious than her older brother but equally hopeful. "We promise we'll clean everything up afterward," she added quickly, having learned from past experiences that this detail was important to grown-ups. Catherine knelt down to George's level, pulling him into a warm hug. "A fort sounds wonderful," she said, her voice steady despite the emotions swirling inside her. "But first, how about we all have breakfast together? Daddy and I have some things we'd like to talk to you about." William watched his wife's face as she spoke to their children, marveling at her ability to remain calm and loving even when her heart was breaking. She had always been an extraordinary mother, but now he was witnessing something even more remarkable. She was preparing to love them through the most difficult time of their young lives, even though it meant facing her own deepest fears. As the children ran back to their rooms to get dressed, Catherine and William stood together in the quiet morning light. They both knew that today marked the beginning of a journey they had never wanted to take. But they also knew that they would face it together, with love and courage, just as they had faced everything else in their life together. The palace around them hummed with its usual morning activity. Staff members went about their duties, unaware that the family they served was about to embark on the most challenging chapter of their lives. Outside, the world continued to turn, but inside this room, time seemed to stand still as 2 people prepared to say goodbye to the life they had always known. The family breakfast that morning felt different from their usual cheerful gatherings. Catherine had chosen the small dining room instead of the formal one, wanting the conversation to feel as intimate and safe as possible. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the children's faces as they chatted about their plans for the day. William sat across from Catherine, occasionally catching her eye with silent messages of support. They had talked late into the night about how to approach this conversation, knowing that their children deserved honesty while still being protected from unnecessary worry. "Mummy looks tired," Charlotte observed, her young face showing concern as she studied Catherine's pale complexion. At 7 years old, she had always been the most perceptive of their children, often noticing things that others missed. Catherine smiled gently at her daughter. "You're very observant, sweetheart. Mummy has been feeling a bit unwell lately, and the doctors are helping me get better." She reached across the table to squeeze Charlotte's hand. "That's actually something Daddy and I wanted to talk to you all about." George looked up from his cereal, suddenly serious. At 9, he was beginning to understand that grown-up conversations often meant important changes were coming. "Are you sick like when Louis had the flu?" he asked, hope evident in his voice that it might be something that simple. "It's a bit more complicated than that," William said carefully. "Mummy needs to spend some time resting and getting treatment from the doctors. It might mean some changes to our routine for a while." Louis, who had been quietly building towers with his cereal pieces, looked up with wide eyes. "Will Mummy have to go to the hospital?" At 4 years old, his understanding was limited, but he could sense the seriousness in his parents' voices. Catherine left her chair and knelt beside Louis, pulling him onto her lap. "Sometimes I might need to visit the doctors, but I'll always come home to you," she promised, kissing the top of his head. "And when I can't be here, Daddy will take extra good care of you." The truth was more complicated than what she could tell them now. The treatment schedule would be demanding, and there would be days when she would be too weak to participate in their normal activities. But she wanted them to adjust gradually, to feel secure even as their world shifted around them. "Will we still be able to do our nature walks?" Charlotte asked, referring to their weekly tradition of exploring the palace grounds together, looking for interesting birds and plants. "We'll definitely keep doing our walks," Catherine assured her. "Maybe sometimes they'll be shorter, and sometimes Daddy might lead them. But we won't stop exploring together." She had already made mental notes about all their traditions, determined to maintain as much normalcy as possible. After breakfast, while the children played in the garden under the watchful eye of their nanny, Catherine and William retreated to his study. The room was lined with books and filled with comfortable chairs, a space where they had made many important decisions together over the years. "I think that went well," William said, though his voice carried uncertainty. "They seemed to understand without being too frightened." Catherine nodded, settling into the chair by the window where she could keep an eye on the children outside. "George is worried, though. I could see it in his eyes. He's old enough to know we're not telling him everything." "Should we tell him more?" William asked. "He's always been mature for his age." "Not yet," Catherine decided. "Let's see how they adjust to this much first. If the treatment goes well, maybe we won't need to burden them with more details." She paused, watching Charlotte help Louis climb a tree. "But if things change, if I get worse, we'll need to be more direct with him." William moved to stand behind her chair, his hands resting on her shoulders. "The treatment will work," he said firmly. "It has to work." Catherine leaned back against him, drawing strength from his unwavering support. "I've been thinking about the recording project," she said. "I want to start this week while I still have energy. Maybe we could set up the camera in the garden, make it feel natural instead of forced." "What do you want to say to them?" William asked gently. "Everything," Catherine whispered. "I want to tell them about the day each of them was born, how proud I am of their kindness and creativity. I want them to know about my childhood, about your father and grandmother, about all the family stories they should hear from me." William felt his throat tighten. The idea of Catherine creating these messages, these final gifts for their children, made everything feel terrifyingly real. But he also understood her need to do this, to ensure that her love would continue to guide them no matter what happened. "We'll start tomorrow," he promised. "I'll arrange for a private crew, people who understand the sensitivity of what we're doing." Outside, the children's laughter drifted through the window. George was now helping Louis down from the tree while Charlotte gathered flowers for a bouquet. They looked so innocent, so unaware of the storm clouds gathering around their family. That evening, after the children were tucked into bed, Catherine sat at her dressing table, brushing her hair. The routine was the same as always, but she found herself studying her reflection more carefully than usual. Would the treatment change how she looked? Would there come a time when the children would struggle to remember her as she was now? William appeared in the mirror behind her, taking the brush from her hands to continue the nightly ritual himself. "Whatever happens," he said softly, "they'll remember this. They'll remember how loved they were, how complete our family felt." Catherine closed her eyes, feeling the gentle rhythm of the brush through her hair. In this quiet moment, surrounded by love and familiar routines, she could almost forget about the uncertain future ahead. Almost, but not quite. 3 weeks had passed since that first difficult conversation with the children, and Catherine's treatment had begun in earnest. The chemotherapy sessions left her exhausted, but she was determined to maintain as much normalcy as possible for her family. Today was special. They were filming the first of her video messages for the children. The camera crew had set up discreetly in the palace's private garden, choosing a spot beneath Catherine's favorite oak tree. William had insisted on the most trusted professionals, people who understood that this project required absolute confidentiality and infinite sensitivity. Catherine sat on a simple wooden bench, wearing a soft blue dress that brought out her eyes. She had chosen to do her own makeup that morning, wanting to look like herself rather than a formal version of the Princess of Wales. This wasn't about royal duty. This was about being a mother. "Take your time," the director said gently. "We're not in any rush. Start whenever you feel ready." Catherine looked into the camera lens, imagining her children's faces years from now, watching these messages. The thought both comforted and broke her heart. "Hello, my darlings," she began, her voice warm and steady. "If you're watching this, it means Mummy isn't there to tell you these things in person. But I want you to know that my love for you is bigger than anything that could ever keep us apart." She paused, gathering her thoughts. William stood just out of frame, offering silent encouragement. "George, my wonderful firstborn, do you remember when you were little and used to ask me why the sky was blue? You were always so curious about everything, asking questions that made me think and learn alongside you. That curiosity is one of your greatest gifts. Never stop asking questions. Never stop wondering about the world around you." The filming continued for over an hour, with Catherine sharing memories, offering guidance, and expressing her love in ways she hoped would sustain her children through whatever lay ahead. Between takes, she sipped tea and rested, the treatment making her tire more easily than before. During a break, Charlotte appeared in the garden, having finished her afternoon lessons. She approached cautiously, sensing that something important was happening. "What are you doing, Mummy?" she asked, her young face curious and slightly concerned. "I'm making some special videos," Catherine explained, pulling Charlotte close. "Stories about our family that I want to make sure you always remember." "Can I be in one?" Charlotte asked hopefully. "I could tell you about the fairy house we built last week." Catherine's heart swelled at her daughter's innocence and enthusiasm. "That's a wonderful idea, sweetheart. Maybe we can do that tomorrow." She looked at the director, who nodded understanding. This project was evolving naturally, becoming more than just messages from mother to children. That evening, after the crew had packed up their equipment, the family gathered for dinner. Catherine had more energy than she'd had in days, buoyed by the meaningful work of the afternoon. The children chattered about their day, unaware that their mother had spent hours creating what might become their most precious inheritance. "Mummy looks happier today," Louis observed, his 4-year-old directness cutting straight to the heart of things as it often did. "I am happier today," Catherine agreed, reaching over to ruffle his hair. "Sometimes doing something important for the people you love makes you feel better, even when you're not feeling well." William watched his wife with admiration. Even in the midst of her own struggle, she was thinking about others, planning for their future happiness. It was so essentially Catherine, putting family first, finding strength in love rather than in her own circumstances. Later that night, after the children were asleep, Catherine and William reviewed some of the footage on a laptop in their bedroom. Seeing herself on screen was strange for Catherine, but she was pleased with how natural and loving the messages felt. "The children will treasure these," William said softly. "Not just the words, but seeing you like this, strong and beautiful and so completely devoted to them." "I want to do one for you too," Catherine said suddenly. "Not just for the children, I want you to have something that's just for you." William felt his eyes fill with tears. "Catherine, you don't need to." "I do need to," she interrupted gently. "You're going to have to be strong for all of us, but someday you'll need to hear that it's okay to grieve, okay to find happiness again. I want you to have my permission, my blessing to live fully even after I'm gone." The weight of her words hung in the air between them. It was the first time either of them had spoken so directly about the possibility that her treatment might not be successful. The honesty was both painful and necessary. "Let's not plan that video yet," William said finally. "Let's focus on the children's messages for now. We have time." But even as he said it, they both knew that time was the one thing they couldn't count on. Catherine's latest test results had shown that the cancer was more aggressive than the doctors had initially hoped. The treatment was helping, but slowly, and there was no guarantee it would be enough. Catherine fell asleep that night thinking about tomorrow's filming session with Charlotte. Her daughter's excitement about being included had sparked an idea. Maybe all the children could participate in creating these family memories. It would give them agency in the process, a way to contribute to their own future comfort. In the darkness beside her, William lay awake listening to her breathing, each gentle exhale a reminder of how precious and fragile their time together had become. He thought about the messages she was creating, about the love she was pouring into every word, and he felt both grateful and heartbroken that their children would have such beautiful reminders of their extraordinary mother. The autumn leaves were beginning to turn golden when Catherine received news that would change everything. Dr. Matthews, her lead oncologist, had requested an urgent meeting. As she and William sat in the private medical office, the afternoon light filtering through the windows seemed too bright, too cheerful for the conversation they were about to have. "I'm afraid the latest scans show that the cancer has spread more than we hoped," Dr. Matthews said gently. "The current treatment isn't working as effectively as we'd like. We need to discuss more aggressive options, but I also need to be honest with you about what that might mean." Catherine felt the world tilt around her. She had known this was a possibility, but hearing it spoken aloud made it terrifyingly real. Beside her, William reached for her hand, his grip strong and steady even as she felt him trembling slightly. "How long?" William asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's impossible to say with certainty," the doctor replied. "With aggressive treatment, we could be looking at months, possibly a year or more. Without it, considerably less, but the aggressive treatment would mean significant side effects, extended hospital stays. You would need to weigh quality of life against quantity." The drive back to the palace was silent. Both Catherine and William were lost in their own thoughts, trying to process this new reality. When they arrived home, the children were in the garden with their tutor, their laughter floating on the autumn air like music from another world. That evening, after the children were in bed, Catherine and William sat in their private sitting room, the fire crackling softly in the hearth. They had spent hours talking, weighing options, trying to make an impossible decision together. "I don't want to spend my remaining time in a hospital bed," Catherine said finally. "I want to be here with them for as long as I can manage it. I want to finish the recordings, help them understand what's happening, make sure they're prepared." William nodded, though his heart was breaking. "We'll arrange for the best care possible here at home. Whatever you need, whatever will keep you comfortable and give us the most time together. We need to tell the children more now," Catherine continued. "George especially. He's starting to ask more questions, and he deserves to know the truth." The next morning, Catherine found George in the library, quietly reading one of his favorite adventure books. At 9, he was becoming more introspective, often seeking out quiet spaces when he sensed tension in the household. "May I join you?" Catherine asked, settling into the chair beside him. George looked up from his book, studying his mother's face with an intensity that reminded her so much of William. "You're really sick, aren't you, Mummy?" "Not just tired sick, but really sick." Catherine took a deep breath, knowing this moment had come sooner than she'd hoped, but understanding that George needed honesty. "Yes, darling. I am really sick. The doctors are doing everything they can to help me, but sometimes our bodies don't get better the way we want them to." "Are you going to die?" The question came out in a rush, as if George had been holding it back for weeks. Catherine pulled him into her arms, feeling his small body tense with worry. "I might, sweetheart. I don't want to, and I'm going to fight as hard as I can to stay with you and Daddy and Charlotte and Louis for as long as possible. But I need you to know that if something does happen to me, you're going to be okay." George was quiet for a long moment, processing this information with the seriousness of someone far older than his years. Will Daddy take care of us? Of course he will. And you have so many people who love you. Your grandparents, your aunts and uncles, all the people who work here who care about our family. You'll never be alone. But I want you to take care of us, George said, his voice small and frightened. I will, for as long as I can, Catherine promised, and even after that in a different way. All the love I have for you doesn't just disappear. It stays with you forever. That afternoon, Catherine gathered Charlotte and Louis for a gentler version of the same conversation. Charlotte cried but asked thoughtful questions about heaven and whether people could still watch over their families from there. Louis mostly wanted assurance that his bedtime stories would continue, his 4-year-old mind not quite able to grasp the full magnitude of what they were discussing. The family's routine began to shift in subtle ways. Catherine started spending more time with each child individually, creating special moments and traditions they could carry forward. With George, she began teaching him some of the more formal aspects of royal protocol, knowing he would need these skills earlier than they had planned. With Charlotte, she worked on a special garden project, planting bulbs that would bloom in the spring as a reminder of their time together. With Louis, she read extra stories and sang the lullabies her own mother had sung to her. William watched his wife pour her remaining energy into these precious moments with their children, marveling at her strength and grace. Even as her body grew weaker, her spirit seemed to burn brighter, determined to pack a lifetime of love into whatever time they had left. The video recordings continued, but they took on new urgency. Catherine created messages for each child's future milestones, first days of school, graduations, weddings. She recorded herself reading their favorite stories, singing lullabies and sharing family recipes. Each session left her exhausted but fulfilled. One evening, as Catherine was tucking Charlotte into bed, her daughter looked up with serious eyes. "Mummy, when you go to heaven, will you be sad that you can't hug us anymore?" Catherine smoothed Charlotte's hair, choosing her words carefully. "I think I'll be happy knowing that you're growing up to be such wonderful, kind people. And maybe when you miss me most, you'll feel something warm in your heart. That will be my love still there with you." Charlotte nodded solemnly, then wrapped her arms around Catherine's neck. "I love you, Mummy, more than all the stars in the sky." "And I love you more than all the waves in the ocean," Catherine replied, their special phrase that never failed to make Charlotte smile. As autumn deepened into winter, the family treasured each day with new intensity, knowing that their time together was more precious than anything else in the world. Winter had settled over the palace grounds like a gentle blanket, and Catherine's condition had stabilized somewhat, giving the family precious weeks of relative normalcy. She had good days and difficult days, but the love that filled their home remained constant. Today was particularly special. It was the day they would film the final video message, the one meant for William. Catherine had chosen the small sitting room where they had spent countless quiet evenings together. The afternoon light was soft and golden, casting a warm glow that made everything feel peaceful and intimate. She wore William's favorite blue sweater, the one she had borrowed from him years ago and never returned. "Are you sure you want to do this now?" William asked, his voice thick with emotion. "We could wait until you're feeling stronger." Catherine shook her head gently. "I feel clear today, and that's what matters. Besides, this one is the most important. I need to know that you'll have these words when you need them most." The camera operator, whom they had worked with for months now, set up the equipment with practiced discretion. He had become almost like family, witness to so many intimate moments as Catherine poured her heart into these recordings. William positioned himself just out of frame, close enough that Catherine could see him but far enough away that this message would truly be hers alone. She looked into the camera and saw not the lens but his face in years to come, when grief might be overwhelming him. "My dearest William," she began, her voice strong despite her physical frailty. "If you're watching this, it means I've had to leave you sooner than either of us wanted. I know how much pain you must be in, and I wish I could take that away from you. But I need you to know that loving you has been the greatest joy of my life." She paused, gathering her thoughts and her strength. "I want to tell you about the day I knew I loved you. It wasn't when we first met or even during those early romantic moments. It was that Tuesday morning when you brought me tea in bed and stayed to talk about absolutely nothing important for 2 hours. That's when I knew, You would choose to spend ordinary moments with me and somehow make them extraordinary. Tears began to slip down Catherine's cheeks, but her voice remained steady. You're going to want to carry all the weight of raising our children alone, but please remember that you don't have to be perfect. They need you to be their father, not their mother as well. Let them see you grieve, let them help you heal. They're stronger than you think, and they'll learn resilience by watching you find your way through this. William wiped his own eyes, listening to words that felt like both a gift and a goodbye. Catherine continued, speaking directly to his deepest fears and concerns. I want you to find love again, William. Not right away, and not because you need to replace what we had, but because you deserve to be happy. When that time comes, and you'll know when it does, choose someone who loves our children as much as they love you. Don't feel guilty about moving forward. I want you to live fully, not just survive. She talked about their shared dreams, their private jokes, the way he had supported her through every challenge of royal life. She thanked him for being her anchor when the world felt overwhelming and for believing in her even when she doubted herself. Take care of yourself, she urged toward the end of the recording. Eat proper meals, get enough sleep. Don't work yourself into the ground trying to be everything to everyone. The children need you healthy and present more than they need you perfect. Finally, she leaned forward slightly as if getting closer to him across time and space. I'm not really gone, you know. I'm in every sunset you watch from our bedroom window, in every laugh line around your eyes, in every act of kindness our children show to others. Our love doesn't end just because I can't be there to hold your hand anymore. When the recording was finished, Catherine felt both drained and peaceful. She had said everything she needed to say, left nothing unsaid that might cause him regret later. That evening, the entire family gathered for what had become their new tradition: dinner in the small dining room, followed by games and stories by the fire. Catherine was too tired to eat much, but she savored watching her children's animated faces as they shared the details of their day. George had started a new book about explorers and regaled them with facts about famous expeditions. Charlotte showed off a drawing she had made of their family as stick figures holding hands under a rainbow. Louis performed an elaborate puppet show with his stuffed animals, complete with different voices for each character. William caught Catherine's eye across the room as their youngest son made them all laugh with his silly performance. In that moment, surrounded by the sound of their children's joy, both parents felt a deep sense of completion. Whatever happened next, they had given their children this, a foundation of love so strong that it could weather any storm. Later, as William helped Catherine get ready for bed, she mentioned something that had been on her mind. I want to write letters, she said. Physical letters that the children can hold for times when watching videos feels too hard. What kind of letters? William asked, brushing her hair with the gentle rhythm that had become one of their most treasured rituals. Letters for when they're scared. Letters for when they achieve something wonderful. Letters for when they fall in love. Letters for when they become parents themselves. I want them to have my words for all the moments when they might need their mother's voice. William nodded, understanding immediately. These letters would be different from the videos, more intimate, more specific to particular moments in their future lives. We'll get beautiful stationery, he promised. And you can take as much time as you need with each one. Catherine smiled at his reflection in the mirror. Even now, even facing this impossible situation, he was thinking about how to make her wishes come true. It was so characteristic of the man she had fallen in love with, always putting others first, always finding ways to turn love into action. As they settled into bed that night, Catherine felt a sense of completion she hadn't expected. The video messages were finished, the letters would be written, and their children were as prepared as young hearts could be for what lay ahead. Most importantly, she and William had faced this challenge together, their bond growing stronger even as her body grew weaker. Spring arrived early that year, bringing with it a burst of color that seemed to mock the darkness settling over the palace. Catherine's condition had deteriorated significantly over the past month, and everyone knew that their time together was measured now in days rather than weeks. Yet somehow the approach of the end had brought an unexpected peace to their family. Catherine spent most of her time in the sunroom now, surrounded by flowers that William brought in fresh each morning. The children had adapted to this new routine, with the remarkable resilience that she had always admired in them. They would do their lessons nearby, occasionally coming over to share a discovery or ask for help with their work. "Mummy, look what I drew," Charlotte said, approaching with a watercolor painting still damp from her art lesson. It showed a beautiful garden with 4 figures standing together, unmistakably their family, but with an additional figure in white standing slightly apart, watching over the others. "It's beautiful, darling," Catherine said, her voice softer now but still warm with love. "Tell me about the lady in white." "That's you," Charlotte explained matter-of-factly. "After you go to heaven, but you're still watching us. Miss Sarah said that's what angels do. They watch over the people they love." Catherine felt tears prick her eyes, not from sadness but from wonder at her daughter's ability to find comfort in such a difficult concept. "Miss Sarah is very wise," she agreed. "And your painting is perfect." George had become more protective lately, often stationing himself close to his mother's chair with a book, as if his presence could somehow keep her safe. Louis, in his 4-year-old way, seemed to sense that extra cuddles were needed and spent much of each day curled up next to Catherine, sometimes falling asleep in her arms. William had arranged for the most trusted medical team to care for Catherine at home, ensuring she could spend her final days surrounded by family, rather than in a sterile hospital room. Dr. Sarah Chen, the palliative care specialist, had become a gentle presence in their lives, helping them navigate this final phase with dignity and as little pain as possible. "How are the children really doing?" Dr. Chen asked William during one of their private consultations. "Sometimes young people hide their feelings to protect the adults around them." "George asks a lot of questions about what happens after," William replied honestly. "Charlotte seems to have accepted it better than any of us. She talks about Catherine visiting her in dreams and watching from heaven, as if it's the most natural thing in the world. Louis is clingy but still his cheerful self most of the time. They're processing this in their own ways," Dr. Chen assured him. "The fact that you've been so open and honest with them, that they've had time to adjust gradually, it's going to help them tremendously in the long run." That afternoon, Catherine asked William to help her with one final project. "I want to plant something," she said. "Something that will bloom every year on my birthday, so the children will have a special way to remember that day." William helped her to the garden, where the head gardener had prepared a special spot near the children's favorite climbing tree. Catherine could barely hold the small spade, but she insisted on placing the bulbs in the earth herself, dozens of daffodils that would create a golden carpet each spring. "These will be my birthday flowers," she told the children, who had gathered to help. "Every March, when they bloom, you can have a little celebration and tell each other your favorite memories of Mummy." "Can we have cake too?" Louis asked, practical as always about the important details. "Absolutely cake," Catherine laughed, the sound lighter than it had been in weeks. "The biggest, most beautiful cake you can imagine." As the days grew shorter and Catherine grew weaker, the family began to live in moments rather than plans. William would carry her to different rooms so she could see all the places that had been important to their life together. The children would pile onto her bed in the evenings for stories, though now Catherine often fell asleep before the tales were finished. One particularly difficult night, when Catherine's breathing had become labored and William was struggling with his own exhaustion, George appeared in their bedroom doorway. "Can I help?" he asked simply, his 9-year-old face serious and determined. William was about to send him back to bed when Catherine reached out weakly for George's hand. "Yes," she whispered. "You can help by being brave and taking care of Charlotte and Louis when I can't anymore. Can you do that for me?" George nodded solemnly. "I promise, Mummy. I'll be the best big brother ever." "You already are," Catherine assured him. "I'm so proud of who you're becoming." The next morning brought an unexpected gift. Catherine woke feeling clearer and stronger than she had in days. Dr. Chen explained that this sometimes happened near the end, that the body could rally one final time. Catherine decided to use this precious energy for something special. "I want to have tea with each of them," she told William. "One last proper conversation with each child. Just the 2 of us." They set up a small table in the sunroom, complete with the children's favorite china tea set. Catherine met with each child individually, sharing private words and special memories that were meant for them alone. With George, she talked about leadership and responsibility, but also about the importance of staying young at heart. With Charlotte, she spoke about creativity and kindness, and how inner beauty was the only kind that truly mattered. With Louis, she simply held him close and told him silly stories that made him giggle. Finally, as the sun was setting, Catherine and William sat together in the garden where they had first talked about his proposal years ago. The early spring air was cool but not unpleasant, and the bulbs they had planted were already beginning to push tiny green shoots through the earth. "No regrets?" William asked, holding her hand and marveling at how delicate it had become. "None," Catherine said firmly. "How could I regret a life that gave me you and our beautiful children? How could I regret love this deep?" They sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to appear, both knowing that this was likely their last evening together like this. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, and soon William would face the unthinkable task of helping their children say goodbye. But tonight, in this moment, they were simply a man and woman who had loved each other completely, watching the stars appear over the home they had built together. The morning came quietly, with soft sunlight filtering through the bedroom curtains where Catherine lay surrounded by her family. It was a Tuesday in late March, exactly 3 months since her diagnosis had taken its final devastating turn. She had slipped into unconsciousness during the night, but her breathing remained peaceful, and Dr. Chen assured them that she was comfortable. William sat beside the bed holding her hand, while the children took turns talking to her, sharing stories and singing the lullabies she had taught them. George read from one of their favorite adventure books, his voice steady despite the tears on his cheeks. Charlotte showed her the latest drawings she had made, describing each colorful detail. Louis simply curled up next to his mother, his small hand resting on her arm. "She can hear you," Dr. Chen assured them gently. "Keep talking to her, keep sharing your love. It's the most important thing you can do right now." As the day wore on, family members came to say their goodbyes. William's father arrived with tears in his eyes, standing quietly at the foot of the bed. Catherine's parents held each other close, whispering their love and gratitude for the joy she had brought to their lives. The palace staff, who had become like extended family over the years, waited respectfully in the hallway. They had watched Catherine grow from a young woman uncertain about royal life into a beloved princess who treated everyone with kindness and respect. Now they wanted to honor her in these final moments. As evening approached, Catherine's breathing became even more peaceful, and Dr. Chen indicated that the end was very near. William gathered the children close, helping them understand that Mummy was preparing to go to heaven, just as they had talked about. "Should we sing to her?" Charlotte asked, her voice small but brave. "I think she would love that," William replied, his own voice breaking slightly. Together, the four of them sang the lullaby that Catherine had sung to each child since birth, their voices blending in a melody of pure love. It was a song about dreams and stars and love that never ends, and somehow it felt like the perfect goodbye. As the last notes faded, Catherine drew one final gentle breath. The room fell into profound silence, broken only by the soft sound of William's quiet weeping. She looked peaceful, almost as if she were simply sleeping, a slight smile still gracing her lips. Dr. Chen stepped forward to confirm what they all knew. Catherine had passed away surrounded by love, exactly as she had hoped. The children reacted differently to this moment they had been preparing for. George stood very straight, trying to be brave like his mother had asked him to be. Charlotte climbed into William's lap, needing the comfort of his arms. Louis looked confused, asking in his innocent way when Mummy would wake up. "She won't wake up in the way you mean," William explained gently, pulling all 3 children close. "But part of her will always be with us, in our hearts, in our memories, in all the love she gave us." The next few hours passed in a blur of necessary arrangements and gentle rituals. The palace staff helped prepare Catherine's body with the dignity befitting a princess, but more importantly, with the love due to a woman who had touched so many lives. William made the difficult phone calls to notify the appropriate officials, while the children stayed close to their grandparents. That evening, after the formal procedures were complete, William took the children back to their mother's room one final time. They each placed a small token with her. George left a drawing he had made of their family. Charlotte placed a flower from the garden, and Louis tucked in his favorite small stuffed bear so Mummy wouldn't be lonely. "Can we tell her one more thing?" Charlotte asked. "Of course, sweetheart," William replied. "We love you, Mummy," all 3 children said together, their voices clear and strong. "Thank you for being the best mummy in the whole world." In the days that followed, the world mourned alongside the royal family. Flowers poured in from around the globe, and millions of people shared their own memories of Catherine's kindness and grace. But for William and the children, the most important mourning happened quietly at home, as they began to learn how to live with the enormous hole she had left behind. The video messages became a source of great comfort, especially during the hardest moments. When Louis had nightmares, they would watch Catherine reading his favorite story. When Charlotte felt sad at school, she would remember her mother's words about being kind and creative. When George faced new responsibilities as he grew older, Catherine's recorded advice helped guide him. 3 months later, on what would have been Catherine's birthday, the daffodils she had planted bloomed in a golden carpet just as she had promised. The family gathered around the flowers with a beautiful cake, sharing their favorite memories and feeling, somehow, that she was there with them. William found her final letter to him that day, tucked away where she had left it with instructions that it should be given to him on this specific date. In it, she reminded him once more of her love, her faith in his strength, and her certainty that their children would grow up to be extraordinary people because of the love they had shared as a family. "Look at how beautiful they are," she had written. "Look at how much love surrounds them. We did this together, William. We gave them everything they need to live wonderful lives. Now you need to trust that foundation and let them flourish." As the seasons turned and years passed, Catherine's presence in their lives evolved but never diminished. The children grew up carrying her wisdom in their hearts, her laughter in their memories, and her love in everything they did. William eventually found love again, just as Catherine had hoped, with someone who honored her memory while bringing new joy to their family. But every March, when the daffodils bloomed, they would gather together to remember the extraordinary woman who had taught them that love never truly ends. It simply takes new forms, blooming eternal in the hearts of those who carry it forward.